Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. So let's see. Let's try this. Testing, can you hear me? Okay, there it goes. I think it was something. Now I'm hearing myself in the video, and it does not sound like a chipmunk. All right. I still sound like me, but just not always the deepest voice, but at least I don't sound like a cartoon character. Okay, so the title of this video is She's Just Like Us, and that's the, because there was a couple of events that happened throughout the week, and some of the things that I've found out about recently that reminded me of this particular video clip. So I'm going to start this off by playing this, and hopefully this goes through. I won't know if you can hear me. I was hoping to have somebody else join me in the chat, but I don't see anybody in the chat or anybody joining me in the stream. Bear with me 1 second. Where did that video end up going? To There it is. So we'll see if this actually plays. Yeah, so that's a GIF that you can that you constantly see on Twitter, and it's from 30 Rock, but it's once I started explaining one of the situations that happened this week, maybe you'll get why that's funny and appropriate. So one of these, I guess maybe I'll just start with that one. It's the Kamala Harris incident where she was on some program, I forget what it's called, the Breakfast Club or something along those lines. She was talking about how when she was in college, she smoked marijuana and listened to Snoop Dogg and Tupac. She started off by talking about how she smoked pot and did inhale, and they asked her what she was listening to when she got high, and she said Snoop Dogg and Tupac. And Kamala Harris is not that old, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, she's not Ocasio-Cortez young, but let's see. Oh, sorry, not Camila, it's Kamala. It's all A's. But not that that quite matters, but let's see. She's 54. Okay, not. I thought she was in her 40s, but yeah, so 54. Not as old as a lot of the people in Congress, but yeah, I thought she was, early 40s, but I guess maybe. Okay, 54. That's cool. That's getting up there. So maybe her memory isn't what it was, but people have been debunking this and pointing out that Tupac and Snoop Dogg didn't even have their albums out until after she had graduated from law school. So either she was smoking pot in, well, so one thing is like maybe her time frame is a little off, like by a few years. It looks like about 6 years difference between when their first albums came out and when she was actually in school. So either she's a little off on her timetable by over half a decade, or she was smoking pot not during law school, but while on the job as a lawyer. I'm like, being off by half a decade, I don't understand, because you would remember certain things about college and in law school, you would think that she would have, like things, people get rowdy in regular school, like getting your master, or not your master's, getting your associates or your bachelor's. I can understand people going into the party environment or the party mentality and not really concentrating on their studies. That happens a lot. But once you start getting out to, once you get past the regular college requirements and get into your master's degrees or your doctorate, or just pursuing a law degree, which means you do have to take, I think it's 4, I don't know if it's 2 years at a regular school or 4 years at a regular school, and then you go on to pursue your law degree at a law-focused university. But I think most lawyers are in school for a minimum of 6 years, if I'm not mistaken. So it's on par with a master's degree, not with a bachelor's or associates. Anyway, so you'd think at that kind of level, you had to like, okay, time to take things seriously, time to crack down, time to get more focused on things. But apparently, according to her own admission, she wasn't taking it very seriously. So which has led most people to believe that she's full of it, and she was serious in college because she needed to be in order to become a lawyer. And now that she's a politician, she's trying to appeal to younger demographics by talking about things that they could relate to, similar to the Hillary Clinton infamous hot sauce. It's seeing the interview and seeing what people are saying about it. It's just people like Harris and Ocasio-Cortez and Booker are so out of touch with reality and with what is going on with people with the millennial generation. Yes, there are crazy people, and there are sorry, that's going into Booker and more the Ocasio-Cortez. What Kamala Harris did in this particular instance wasn't very crazy. It just seems like she's trying to appeal to a younger demographic when she can't. It's like, when what was it? When Bill Clinton was running, it wasn't cool to have smoked pot. Like, I smoked pot, but I didn't inhale. That was his. Yeah. And now it's gone the other way. And like, oh, now they're trying to brag about doing drugs in college. And usually that sort of thing is, I don't know if maybe that's just my perspective on it. It seems like, well, somebody who would subject themselves to that, and if they did it in the past, okay, that's one thing. But if they're bragging about it, or they're like, that's something that I would think you would admit kind of sheepishly or ashamed, like, oh yeah, I grew out of it. It's no longer a thing. But these people are kind of like, oh yeah, these people are speaking highly of their stupidity when in college. Anyway, so Kamala Harris, not all that bad, not all that. I mean, it's just fun. Seems kind of pandering along the same lines as, how do you do, fellow kids? It just doesn't seem to add up. Now, Booker and Ocasio-Cortez, they are on the more extreme ends in trying to pander or connect with younger demographics in bizarre and idiotic ways. The Spartacus moment, and what is Ocasio talking about? This is our moon landing, or our mission to the moon. This is so. I don't think there's anything recently in the news about Booker, although aside from his launch of his presidential campaign, and oh, I'm just like you because I choose to live in a poor neighborhood, even though I'm making, what is it, 4 times the average American household income. Right? Is it 4 times? Maybe it's not 4. Maybe it's not quite 4 times. Maybe it's because what is the average American household income versus Congress? Maybe it's only 3 times. But he's making good money as a member of Congress, and he's trying to appeal, and he's like, chooses to live in a lower income neighborhood, which, yeah, sure, he can do that, but I don't get why that's a bragging point or something he can, speak highly about, especially since he was the neighborhood or the particular neighborhood he lives in has been stagnant for years under Democratic control. And you're like, well, that's the reason why that area is still a poor neighborhood is because of people like you that were running it. And actually, I can't remember if I do know that he was a politician, like involved in running something prior to coming to Congress. And I think it's that neighborhood that he currently lives in, right? Was he I'll have to double check that, because maybe I'm either misremembering or because I'm pretty sure one of the YouTube videos talking about his presidential bid that I watched was talking about he was part of the reason why that community is in the shambles it's in right now, due to his political efforts. So I don't know if that was political efforts while he was in Congress or political efforts while he was in some kind of a position within that neighborhood. Anyway, main focus for today is more along the lines of Ocasio-Cortez. And now everybody's talking about the Green New Deal, and I talked about that with some of the other people yesterday. So I don't want this to be primarily focused on the Green New Deal. I've laughed at that, and there's so many people who are mocking it because there's policy in there about eliminating all air traffic by the year 2030, and that's something that's in. Okay, so there's a little bit of debate about 2 different policies. One is the main policy, which has a bunch of stupid things in it, and the other one is a Q&A that came out on Ocasio-Cortez, and the Q&A has even more absurd things in there that they are claiming was the work of Republicans or was not a finished document or something along those lines. I believe the Q&A is the one that has the things about cow farts and the one about people who are unwilling to work. But the stuff that is in apparently the official document says rebuilding every building in the United States to make them more energy efficient, switching from air traffic to rail systems. That's in the official plan that has been verified and has been talked about by the other people who proposed it, which is just absolutely insane. And they're trying to defend this policy as it's not being a definitive. There's no actual how this is going to be implemented or what needs to be done. It's more of just the, hey, this is what we would like to do, and we'll find some way to do it. And you're like, that's. And I was talking with a couple people. It's like, even if you would like to replace all the buildings in the United States to make them more energy efficient, you couldn't possibly do that by the year 2030, just based on the pure time scale alone. I mean, I was talking with my sister-in-law, and we were talking, even just the planning stages of what would be required to revamp all of these buildings, investigating their current energy efficient, and coming up with a plan on what to do to upgrade that building to become more efficient. You're talking about for these large multi-story buildings, some kind of renovation along those lines. You're talking multi-year just in the planning phase, not in the implementation, not in tearing things down and rebuilding it, not in building the actual materials they're going to need to make these energy efficient materials. For even if they tried this plan for even an entire city, this is a 20-year effort minimum for just one city, let alone every building in the United States. It's just, that's what's in the Democrats absolutely want. Oh, we'll find some way to do this. I'm like, it's physically impossible just based on pure time requirements alone. So that's it. And then the trying to remove all cars from the road. That's another part of the legitimate one, or not. I guess maybe I shouldn't say legitimate. Part of the acknowledged. Oh, hello.
Hello. Sorry, I'm late.
No, that's fine. Yeah, part of the acknowledgments of the actual plan was getting rid of all gasoline burning cars by the year 2030 as well, which is
What's the topic?
Oh, so I'm talking about, let's start off talking about Kamala Harris, because apparently she was listening to Tupac 6 years before he actually released an album. I forget the exact, the time frames. You can look it up, because she was talking about how she used to smoke weed in college and listen to Tupac and Snoop Dogg in college, but she graduated 6 years before either of them released an album. So what I'm trying to get to is how they try to appeal to the common people and utterly fail. These are political efforts that are trying to see, I'm just like all of you guys. I'm a normal person, and I don't have any. I'm not like it's so. And I know we talked about the New Deal, so I just barely touching on that, but I want to get into how she even got into Congress in the first place, which is really bizarre. And I'm surprised more people aren't reporting on this. A lot of people or a lot of news outlets that have reported on this are bragging about how innovative her campaign was and all that, and they're completely ignoring the fact that she got $2 million in campaign contributions as a nobody bartender. That doesn't happen. That's not something that happens for grassroots organizations and all this sort of thing. Especially since she got over $500,000 from a single CPAC, like a single contributor to her campaign, donated over $500,000. Like that's not something that is normal, or like, hey, I'm just like everybody else, just some random person. They don't get donations like that on their first ever campaign in a known, come out of nowhere and get $2 million to run against a incumbent candidate. And so you can look this up. I actually had these pulled up, the statistics for her campaign here. So there's a site that you can go to, and this has all the, oh man, I'm gonna put a knock on the door. Give me a second.
All right.
What's the query for the 100?
The 100?
The top 100 scores.
So, you gotta use a row number. It's, so you do your query.
Atlas, are you still there in live chat? Come back.
And then whatever else. And then you gotta put that inside parentheses and then do a select splat above that. That's a splat. And then outside of that, you do if there's an underscore, I think it's just remember an underscore. That doesn't work in, I think it's underscore, and it's less than equal 100. Oh, this is a word, sorry.
Kamala Harris and Alexandria, Ocasio-Cortez's efforts to appeal to us commoners.
Keyword in PS equal. So
a living meme.
Trying to do, and this is where you actually do your sort or your order by. And then in order to limit it to 100, you have to put it all in parentheses, and then outside of it, select everything from this. So you're selecting everything from this subquery where the row number is less than or equal to 100. That's the good. All right. Now, let me know if you have any issues with that. All right. Now, I don't know if you could overhear me, but now you guys know how to do a limited select case in PL/SQL, because PL/SQL is dumb and doesn't let you just do limit. It's not PL/SQL. PL/SQL is actually okay. It's Oracle SQL, their SQL developer, that for some reason doesn't recognize limit. Anyway, that's a completely separate topic. So I've got this pulled up here. I'm going to actually link this in the chat for the video.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not in the Google Hangout. It is in the chat for the actual YouTube video. That's where I'm getting this information from. So this is something called opensecrets.org. This is actually the collected data for what people have to report to the campaign finance administration.
Mm-hmm.
So this is her first ever political endeavor. Small individual contributors, $1.2 million. Large individual contributors, 75,000 from large contributors. That's not something that most politicians get, unless they are established, unless their name is out there and known. That's not usual. And if you look at this site, the Republican that she was running against, so this is after she had won the primary. So this is when it got to the actual statewide vote for representatives for her district. It was her. So she was the candidate versus some guy named Anthony Pappas, not sure how you pronounce his name.
Pappas,
sure. Raised $8,000, $2 million budget versus an $8,000 budget. So, and if you look at, well, this doesn't say from this site in particular, but from some of the stuff I've been looking at, the majority of her campaign contributions she got prior for the primaries, which that is her versus the established established representative for her area. Now he, the numbers aren't. Let's see. I think this particular website doesn't have an official established number for how much he spent during the campaign, but it's somewhere between 2 and 3 million is what he had managed to raise, because this site actually has his aggregate for the entire time he was in Congress, not necessarily what was that last year. But if I scroll, where was it? So there is a chart for Crowley here. Crowley or Cowley? What was the last name? Let me make sure I'm not. Yeah, Crowley.
Mm-hmm.
So it does show the figures for 18, and it looks like about 3.2 million was raised
for Crowley.
For 2018 for Crowley. Although how much he actually spent is not readily available on this site. Although it does say cash on hand is 1.2 million. So
yeah.
I don't know how much of that is left over from previous campaigns or not, but more than likely he spent about $2 million on the campaign. Ocasio-Cortez, a nobody bartender, managed to match him almost dollar for dollar, which that's absurd. That does not happen. That is an anomaly. And so I was looking trying to figure out how she'd actually done this, or how she'd actually achieved this. And so one of the articles talks about a media company that is worth several $1 million. One of the founding members just was at the bar where Ocasio works and started talking to her, and the topic of politics came up. And he had been attending there pretty regularly, and then she came back from some trip and said, yeah, I wanted to run for Congress. And he immediately agreed to help her and put his entire company in support and started making materials for her campaign, and reached out to various CPACs and other so this particular company had run campaigns for Democrats in other states, and for some reason some random idiot, like if you've seen Ocasio-Cortez, she's
made plenty of mistakes.
She's an absolute idiot. So this guy from a media company who has run several campaigns and knows a little bit about the business just agreed to. Okay, it's like the scene from Back to the Future where the guy who is mopping the floors and Michael J. Fox says, "You're going to be mayor." And he's like, "Yeah, mayor. I like the sound of that." That'd be like somebody sitting in that diner and be like, "I'll agree to help you run your campaign. And here's $2 million worth of fundraising, and here's all your free media." What? No, it works for the movie because it's funny. It's like nobody expected the guy who's sweeping the floors to become mayor and eventually run the city. So it was kind of funny that.
Yeah.
But that's fantasy. That's not real life. In real life, some bartender says, "Yeah, I want to run for Congress and be the youngest congressperson ever." People are like, "Yeah, sure, okay, good luck with that," and then they go about their day. They don't spend $2 million on something that is a long shot. It's not practical,
it's
especially
not smart business.
Something like that could have bankrupted that media company. If you're putting your entire company's reputation on backing up some bartender. Now, granted, it paid off for him. She got into Congress. She's getting all kinds of media attention. She just signed a $10 million deal with Netflix. Yeah, this media company made their money back. Now, but they took a huge gamble because they did take money out of their own pocket. They did reach out to their contacts And had this turned into nothing, they would have burned bridges with their, with powerful donators that they had spent years building up relationships with. But this is where I'm going to get into speculation, because it sounds more to me like this particular individual actively sought her out and encouraged her to run. Now, this is something where I can't prove because I couldn't find any support where she had said this in an interview, although I have heard other people reporting about how she was talking about, because she was active in Bernie Sanders' campaign for the Democratic Socialists of America. And this is where she had met other people along those lines. So I haven't found a video clip of her saying this directly. I've only found a couple video clips of other people saying that she has said this, saying that people from the Democratic Socialists of America who had direct ties to Bernie Sanders convinced her to run. Now, if I can't support that 100%, although I've seen multiple people make that claim. Now, if I tie that with the guy who supposedly went to the place where she works and started talking to her about politics, and then she told him that she wanted to run for Congress, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to put the full support of my company behind you." That seems impractical. But if the Democrat Socialists of America said, "Oh, this person is charismatic, she believes in what she says, so she's not going to come off as being false or a liar or something like that. She's also female, of Latino descent," and they probably sought her out as like, okay, she would be a good candidate to put on the card, and should she win, that's going to be a huge win for the Democratic Socialists. And they more than likely reached out to this media company, and so that's all speculation on my part, but it seems that's the only thing that kind of makes sense as to how someone like this got enough support from, financial support and support with these companies. There's too many things that had to work out perfectly for her for it to be by accident. And she's too stupid to have designed all this by herself. Someone saw her as a pawn, as a puppet that they could manipulate to get something achieved. That's the only thing that makes sense, and it seems like the evidence supports that. Now, granted, I could just be, I could be rationalizing it. I could be only looking for evidence that supports this outrageous clear, but I don't think that's the case. It seems more likely that they sought her out and tried to convince her to run. And once she agreed to run, they coached her on how to run a successful campaign, because she didn't campaign in the district where she lived. She didn't campaign in a district that was up for grabs. Like some place that was being contested, like, "Oh, hey, can't run in this particular district because that's something where a Republican might win and we need as many House seats as possible." That may not have been the case. I mean, if you were running for politics, you would think you would run like, "Oh, hey, I'm going to start local and then work my way out." But no, she immediately starts running for the House of Representatives in a district that's not her district. Like, it's not where she lives. She doesn't know anybody there. This is as far as I can tell. This is not where she worked. It's a complete, but what she did, or what they advised her to do, I would say is more likely the case. She ran in a territory that was going to be Democrat no matter what. Like I said, the Republican candidate, $8,000 raised for that campaign. The Republicans have written that off as a lost cause. They're like, yeah, it's always Democrat. It's always going to be Democrat. It's not worth spending money to try to flip this to be Republican. They've all but abandoned it as a lost cause. All she had to do was beat the incumbent Democrat. And from what this looks like is that incumbent Democrat, Mr. Crowley, had figured it was a lock. You know, didn't really campaign, didn't debate, just kind of like, yeah, people are going to vote for me because I'm the guy who's currently there. She got into Congress 16,000 votes to 12,000 votes. Crowley got 12,000 votes. She got 15,000 votes. That was enough to get her into Congress. So there are petitions for stupid, like insane things, like tearing down a local statue that have more signatures than Ocasio needed to get the primary vote. 15,000 people was all it took. So she won the primary by 3,000 votes, and once she became the Democrat primary candidate, she had the House of Representatives on lock. The Republicans weren't going to beat her. She had the name recognition at that point, being the underdog who managed to oust Crowley. And whenever time to vote in the actual, not in the primaries, but in the actual 2000, like the November elections, she got hundreds of thousands of votes, and maybe not hundreds of thousands, but at least over 100,000 votes, purely because she had a D next to her name. Most of the people who voted didn't know who she was. They just know, oh, well, we're Democrats. She's the Democrat candidate. We're not going to put her name next to that R guy, that Pappas or whatever it is. So she got at least 90,000 votes from people who didn't know her, about her campaign or anything like that. I had no idea who she was at the time. And there was a little bit of a viral video that was going around because she challenged Crowley to a debate pretty early on, which you're like, he has no reason to debate you. You're a nothing. You're just some bartender. Like, it's like if you are the person in there doing your job, and somebody comes along and says, "Oh, he refuses to debate me," you're just like, "Who are you, you crazy person? Like, what? why should I show any interest in you?" Like, you at that point, she had done absolutely nothing other than challenge him to a debate.
Yet she wouldn't debate Ben Shapiro.
Oh yeah, that was like
catcalling me.
Yeah, stop catcalling me. Well, the other thing is Candace Owens and what's her name? Allie Beth Stuckey also challenged her to a debate, and no accusations of catcalling from either of them. Ben Shapiro challenges you to a debate. It's obviously because he's obviously catcalling. But when conservative women challenge you equally to a debate, no, just radio silence. Okay. So it's very, very bizarre how she got into Congress in the first place. And Tim Pool did a video talking about the political strategy that they're going to try to use to get her out of Congress, although I don't think that's going to happen. I think no matter what they do, she's the media darling. They got her, she's got this Netflix deal. They're trying to prop her up as the symbol for the Democratic Party, which is...
They're backing the wrong horse, though.
is that a comment based on her face? Like, oh no, I keep hearing people say that she's attractive. I'm like, I don't see it. I see the bug eyes and the big teeth and just the rampant spewing of absolute stupidity. Maybe that's just me, but I can't see the face for the stupid things that come out of its mouth. That's like, I don't know if maybe I'm the weird guy, but the more a woman speaks, and if she's like unintelligent, the less attractive she becomes. It's I don't know if that's normal or whatever. That's that's the case. It's like I've seen or I've talked to a lot of women, and you're like, oh, hey, she's hot, and then you start talking, and then she starts saying stupid, vapid things, and you're like, oh, what was I thinking? What? And then you start to see her in a different light, and you're just like, yeah, no thanks, I'm gone. I'm not worth my time. And then there's other times where it's like, she's all right, and then you start to, you build up a rapport with this person, and then somebody like, dude, what happened to her? Did she change up her hair or something? It's like there's something different about her. She seems way more attractive than when I first met her. It's just, I don't know what that is. But your opinion, or at least my opinion of someone's physical attractive qualities changes based on finding out other information about them. If I find out things that are like, ooh, really, you did that? That completely alters my perception of their physical appearance. Or if it's somebody who's like, oh, we agree on all this and all this, like, yeah, she's pretty hot. Maybe that's just me. I keep hearing a lot of people say that Ocasio-Cortez is attractive, and I'm like, I don't see it at all. I can't get past the stupid coming out of her mouth. It's like
stupid pretty much ruins it.
Yeah, it's like so I've got the, I've always said, yeah, redheads, you get a +2 to attractiveness. I don't know why. It's just the rules. I don't make them up. But being an idiot is like a -5 to any, like, so maybe if she wasn't an idiot, she'd be like a 7. But since she's an idiot, she's like a 2. I'm like, maybe if she was a redhead, then she'd be a 5. That's just how it works. I don't know why.
Hey, evening, everybody.
Hello, Sinister D boy.
My kids are using my other computer for homework, so using my work laptop, but I got time to kill now.
Oh,
Nice.
okay. Yeah, so I'm talking about how Ocasio got into Congress to begin with.
I don't know. I was hearing a lot of redhead talk there for a minute.
Well, I was talking about how people keep saying that Ocasio is attractive, and I'm like, I don't see it. I see
her a tricks when she's not smiling and when she's not staring at something with her eyes wide open.
which is like, okay, so
and is not talking. I would say probably about a 6. I don't know.
Okay, so if you can find the 20% where she isn't saying something stupid or making stupid facial expressions, 20% of the time she's mildly attractive.
The retarded comments and her interviews do knock that down a couple of pegs to about a 2.
Yeah, that's what I say. It's like, man, I
heard her talk. Maybe that's where they're getting that opinion. People see that she's done interviews. People see that she's in the news, so they assume she's smart because she's in politics. So they just won't bother listening and say, "Hey, it's the young, fresh face." So fresh, so face.
Yeah. Oh, who was saying that? I think it was Ben Shapiro was saying that on his podcast.
That's like his new phrase for her because he's right. So on your original topic, I think that's exactly why she's there. I heard part of your original discussion about her working in a bar and a media.
Yeah. Some media company, like a multi-million-dollar media company. One of the owners talked to her about politics, and
she is an unwitting puppet.
Yeah,
they approached her. She's somewhat in politics. She's a young, naive, optimistic person, definitely on the socialist end of things. And they said, this is the direction we want to go. So whatever we tell her to say, she'll be willing and enthusiastic about it and believe it because she already does. So they needed to put someone out there to get rid of all the, old white people look like Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton.
That was the problem with Crowley's campaign. You shouldn't have picked being an old white guy.
He wasn't in on it. He was lazy. He didn't do his job.
Well, no, I was saying it's like you shouldn't have picked the old white guy class. You should have picked something else. Like, man. Like, you decided to go with that campaign strategy, being old and white in 2019? Or I guess 2018. Ooh, bad move. Okay. I think I'm going to end by talking about
Black did the moonwalk.
Oh, the Virginia. Oh, that's a funny story too. That guy.
Yeah. Bad thing is, I was listening to that on a podcast at work, and I almost spit my coffee on my laptop because I saw
Ooh.
a guy looking down, like looking for a space to moonwalk.
Like, yeah, it's like I don't.
Whoa.
I don't think I'm either one in that picture because I distinctly remember putting shoe polish on my face and having it be, and how difficult it was to get off. I'm like, wait, what?
Seriously, if you're in a movie, why do you look for a place to moonwalk? Why did that guy even ask him that question? And why did he contemplate that? And his wife's like, no, this horrible look on her face. Well, my wife tells me that would be improper. All right, so that was just a funny tangent. Back on
dude, yeah, it was. But yeah, I think she was a puppet and just being used by these, the Democratic Socialists of America and possibly this other media campaign or whatever, just to, I don't know if it was just to shake things up, or maybe the media company was just looking for their own pocketbooks because they bet big on Ocasio and it's paying off. Like now they've got other campaigns like, oh, I want to start a campaign for this office and this office. They probably got a bunch of people knocking on their door to have them do their campaign material.
Well,
yeah. So
well, I mean, look at recent events, right? That New Green Deal. Obviously, a lot of that came from her because it's
stupid.
That's one of the dumbest pieces of is that considered legislation? I don't know what that is.
It's a policy. It's a so the New Green Deal that was signed and is actually going before the Congress and all that sort of thing doesn't actually have anything substantial in it. It's just, hey, it would be nice if we did this. It's as binding as the Paris Accords, where it's just
basically a pledge. I pledge $10,000 per kilometer for this 50. How many kilometers can you run?
Yeah, I pledge that we'll stop using all fossil fuels by 2030. Okay. Yeah. How are you going to do this? Oh no! Wait. How are we going to do this?
Everybody that was backing her plan.
Yeah.
All the presidential candidates right now on the Democratic side.
Yeah.
Right. So I think she is just to rejuvenate the college age kids. Say, look, she got into Congress. She can do it. It's basically they're recruiting with her. Yeah. And then the higher ups, the ones actually running for presidential office in 2020, are hoping to bump off of her popularity by saying, look, we agree with the hip younger crowd and she agrees with us. She is just a puppet to boost that sect of Democrats, because I'm thinking Democrats are about to split in half. The normal Democrats that used to be around like a decade ago are still there, and I'm pretty sure they're pulling their hair out as well because
the ones that are more
it's not even left anymore, it's past left.
The ones who are Democrats but are more liberal leaning as opposed to Ocasio, which is left. Like there is no common ground between Ocasio and conservatives. There's
none.
So where like some of the other politicians, you're like, yeah, you don't like them, but you're like, okay, at least they can find some kind of,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what was that dude's name?
But think about it. Bernie Sanders was running on similar stuff.
Yeah.
He got pushed out of the DNC. Basically, he got cheated out. He actually was getting some of the popular vote. But since he already lost, his face is now equated with that loss, with being defeated by Hillary and Kamala Harris and what's Pocahontas' name? I always forget her name.
Lauren.
No, it's not Pocahontas. It's Pocahontas.
Yeah.
or Liawaka.
But their faces have been around for a little while, but now they're wanting to throw their hat in the ring, so they kind of need a new face to spit out these same ideas. But since she's actually gaining more popularity than practically everybody else in the DNC, that could persuade a lot of the mixed people on the left who would have probably just switched over to voting Republican this term.
Yeah.
Maybe sticking with it because she's extremely idealistic and optimistic. And man, that sounds awesome, having bullet trains all over the U.S. and 100% green. That sounds amazing. That's like a $40 quadrillion project.
So, Yeah, so here's one part about it. So one of the guys who actually was part of drafting it, I forget the congressman's name. I don't think he's a senator. I think I think he's in the House of Representatives.
Was it that older guy?
Yeah, the old guy. When people asked him about whether nuclear was going to be a part of it, he said, "No, there's nothing against nuclear or for nuclear. There's no policy on that." And yet the Q&A that came out from Ocasio's office specifically said no nuclear, like an outright ban on all nuclear power, which is just absolutely insane. You're like, wait, you want to get rid of all carbon emissions?
Well, I think,
and your plan is not to go nuclear? Because like I'd be in support of that.
Didn't they already make nuclear power illegal? Didn't they already make nuclear power illegal? Because I remember watching on a show where like this character gets arrested for like selling black uranium rods on the black market to create nuclear power, which is illegal.
Oh well, yeah, that would be something that would be illegal because you can't transport nuclear material across state lines and all that sort of thing, and it has to be. I think the way it is right now, on a legal aspect, you have to get approval for any kind of nuclear, either refining or processing. Like so, anything to do with nuclear materials has to go with approval from the government. Like even for testing, there's a office, the PNNL, that was behind my house. Behind my house, yeah, directly behind my house. So when I was in Washington, there was a lab. It's forget it, Pacific North something labs, Pacific North National Labs, where they do experiments with radiation. And one of my tenants was talking about it. So it's basically they have all these machines that scan things and discovering half-lives and what happens when we subject it to this. Yeah. But in order to do anything along those lines, and they're dealing with minuscule amounts of radioactive material, or if it was released or whatever, ouch, I burned my finger type of stuff. It's not stuff that would be harmful to your health or give you superpowers or anything like that. And so, although when there was a little bit of a scare at the thing where they actually sound the alarms and all that sort of thing, I asked her if she was now going to turn into the Incredible Hulk. Sadly, no. She just had to submit urine samples to the company to make sure that no alpha radiation was showing up in her urine and all that sort of thing. Anyway, it's very minuscule, but they go overboard in protection, is basically the point I'm trying to make. But something along that line, they have this huge facility, and the amount of nuclear material they're talking about is atomic, like minuscule amounts. I mean, atomic would be the right word, right? Like nuclear material at the atom level, and that requires all kinds of paperwork and all kinds of security measures. And
but from what I've read, it goes along with those lines. But there was huge research and a big government-funded budget towards nuclear research. But there was a big scare about North Korea, Russia, nuclear weapons, the Cold War, all that stuff. So most of the research got stifled. The government made it almost practically illegal. Some companies can continue to do research, but like HUMANE was saying, they can only use minuscule amounts. They won't transfer large quantities. And I'm pretty sure there's stockpiles, just tons of uranium that are now locked away in a vault, because when they were doing the research, they had mountains of it.
Yes. And that's part of so up in Washington, part of that is containment. And so a lot of it was buried in facilities, and some of those facilities are not up to our current standards. And so there is a bit of leakage from older areas. And so what the Hanford effort is containing the leakage and all that sort of thing, building new facilities to rehouse this stuff. And also, it's overall containment up there. But while I was there, they decommissioned one of the nuclear power plants, which that makes absolutely no sense. They decommissioned and started to tear down a nuclear power plant up there, a hydro plant, and what they were replacing them with was apparently wind power, which I was asking the guys who were doing the construction, prior to buying my house, I was living in a room which had I was renting a place that had 6 different bedrooms and all that sort of thing. It was for prior military personnel and all that sort of thing. And we had contractors coming through all the time. And I was asking them, oh, what are you here for? And two of the guys were there to help in the deconstructing effort to tear down a hydro plant and tear down a nuclear power plant. I was like, what's wrong with the power plant? Is it like faulty or out of? And like, no, there's just they're going to replace it with a wind power plant. I'm like, what? and everybody there, the guys who were there, like, yeah, we don't know much about nuclear power. We just know that everybody we talked to is saying you're going from a more efficient power plant to a less efficient power plant for, I guess.
It's because
I guess, yeah. I don't know. I don't know the reason. They didn't know the reasons, and everybody who's familiar with the stuff was like, "This is idiotic."
Well, it's because of the Cold War, that big nuclear scare. So the government officials at that time thought that that was too dangerous of a technology to keep investing in, because if we got a hold of that, we'd be at a nuclear war. So the government put such heavy restrictions, it pretty much stifled that entire research. And
yeah, but these were power plants that were still working up until about 2 or 3 years ago. They were still in use.
So now government officials still run under the belief that it is too dangerous and not cost effective and not feasible as a proper power source. So they have the idea that we should decommission it and that solar power and wind power is cleaner, more efficient, and better.
Which
it's because of the last 30 years where that industry has been crushed. So there are still some companies that can do some minor research, but it is so heavily regulated that it's not cost effective anymore to even research it, because you'll spend billions just getting your hands on.
Yeah, and so maybe nuclear research isn't being done all that much in the U.S., but other countries are. I mean, this has been around.
Doing research on it. North Korea is doing research on it.
Yeah, but because I mean, I remember looking into this with some of the guys in the Air Force who I was working with in the Air Force, and we were looking into nuclear power and all this sort of thing. And we were like, yeah, based on what they're saying right now about nuclear power, you're left with less than 0.02 of your initial material as unusable waste.
Yes.
You're talking about like 99.98%.
They had just started researching a new, I think it was a uranium isotope, like something they could extract from just plain uranium. With some number after it. But you're correct. When used in a nuclear reactor, they would be left with like 0.05% nuclear waste, and the rest was just water.
And sure, like instead of storing all this massive amount of material in, I mean, basically they put it in some kind of like not water, but some kind of liquid material, and they just bury it in there, and they surround that in concrete, and they put that concrete thing inside of a metal container, seal up the whole thing, and bury it underground. And I was like, but you're talking about like 0.05 or 0.02, depending on which. But it was like, less than 0.1% of something as the material that you're trying to get rid of. I mean,
it would be about 1,000 years before we could even get close to, a couple 100 pounds of nuclear waste.
Oh yeah, especially So part of that is reusing. So a lot of the stuff that is buried at the Hanford site and buried in Nevada, a lot of that stuff would have been reusable, but instead of realizing that they could reuse it and put it back through the reactor, they instead encased it in a container and then buried it. That's so a lot of that is probably wasted, or it's not worth digging up and getting out of the containment in order to try to reuse it. But our current processes are incredibly safe. And well, there's also the people think that there's a threat of terrorists turning a nuclear power plant into a weapon, like having it melt down or stealing the material in order to make weapons. In order to make weapon grade uranium, you require a purification of 90-something%. I think it's like 96% minimum. It might be. I do know it's 90-something%, and in most power plants that do operate with nuclear material, you're talking about of a purification that's around 60%, and that's on the high end. probably closer to, it's probably somewhere between 40 and 60% for most power plant use. You're like, wait, if you require something that is purified to within the 90% in order to be weapons grade, we're dealing with the 40 to 60% for the average power plant. How would terrorists steal this material, refine it, and turn it into nuclear or weapons grade? That's
like that. That's one thing they were worried about, but they're also worried about like 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl using nuclear reactors as basic, almost like biological weaponry.
Yeah,
radiate everything around the vicinity. But there's a lot of controversy surrounding all of those.
Yeah. And one of the technologies, I mean, this is stuff that's not new or anything like that, because I remember doing this research back in like 2008, 2009, and there was a Swedish company that was so part of this is talking about a pebble bed reactor, because essentially radioactive material is just extremely hot. It is an extremely hot rod or small chunk of the uranium that just stays incredibly hot for a very long time, which is why they can use it to boil water and create electricity with it. And so one of the technologies around nuclear material is encasing one of these within a ceramic shell. So you get a small amount of uranium, encase it in a ceramic shell, and it's just basically a hot rock that stays hot for about 10 to 11 years. You take that hot rock and you put it underwater, and the water starts to boil, and it will continue boiling for 10 years. And so it's called a pebble bed reactor. And a Swedish company was looking at this technology, and they're like, well, why do we need to make this huge pool of water with all these, ceramic rocks with radioactive material in them? We could just make an individual reactor. We've got one hot rock inside of a container that has water, and it boils water and generates electricity. And so this Swedish company was actually selling individual neighborhood reactors. And so what they would do is they bury this thing about 60 feet underground, have a access panel or an access ladder or some kind of mechanism to reach the reactor. It's just a set of boiling water and then a turbine, and they put the hot rock in there. They seal it all up, go up the hatch, close the hatch, and then they have all the houses in a neighborhood attached to that small reactor. And what they were advertising on the websites and stuff was that hot rock nuclear, or so that pebble bed reactor could supply energy for around 60 houses for 5 years. And then whenever the rock starts to run low, or starts to isn't as hot as it once was and can't keep up with the energy demands, they just go down the access chute, replace the rock. And they were talking about doing this for, I think at the time it was $260,000 for one of these units, which is like insane when you're thinking, okay, this is going to last for 5 years, and if you get a neighborhood of 60 people, 60 households that all pitch in, like you're talking about covering your energy bill for the next 5 years for, actually I got to do the math on this because I know I did it at the time, right? Let's see. Oh, it might have been 10 years, right? Because it would stay hot for 10 years in a regular pebble bed, so it might be 10 years. Let me see if I can do the math here. So 260, right? Wait. So 260,000 divided by 60, right?
Even if it's 5 years, that's about $800 a year.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. That's what I was trying to figure out. It's like, what is the cost per year?
Divide that by 5 years and then by 60 households, 833.3333 per year.
Yeah.
Which that's pretty nuts.
Yeah. Like, so it's about that's what because it's about $1,000 per year per household. And you're like, when I was in Alabama, I was spending in the summer, I was spending $500 a month just on keeping my house cool during the summer. And if I could do my entire bill, like energy bill, for about $1,000 a year, yeah, sign me up for that. And far as I know, that technology still exists, that company still exists, and this is not something that has become the norm. I don't know of any neighborhood that has incorporated that, at least not in the United States.
No, something like that would be illegal in the United States.
Yeah, it would probably be illegal in the United States. And the thing is, like, what happens if it melts down? Okay, then a hot rock that is hot enough to boil water, but not really much else.
Yeah, it would be distributed.
Yeah.
Something that small would do absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
The reason the other reactors potentially caused problems because they were dealing with
it's concentrated amounts. Yeah.
Thousands of homes and neighborhoods, offices, buildings, you know, an
Yeah.
entire power grid for like New York City.
Yeah, and if something goes wrong with one of these mini reactors for a neighborhood, somebody just goes down in there and replaces whatever is broken. I mean, it's either fixes the unit or replaces the rock or whatever. It's maintenance on that sort of thing would be incredibly inexpensive.
But
the main cost is actually setting the thing up to begin with. But once you actually have all this installed, and all they have to do is worry about maintenance and replacing the rock. It may be $260,000 for the first 5 years, but after that, you're probably looking at costs of around $60,000 or less for every 5 years after that. I'm like, why isn't this a thing? Who knows?
all right. Well, I mean, so that aside, and kind of tying that back into the main discussion line that branched that diatribe.
Mm-hmm.
You were saying that the older governor guy, and I don't remember his name either, was saying, no, we're not trying to abolish it or make it illegal. But in the FAQ and in the original bill that was released, or statement that was released, they were basically saying their goal is to push it out of existence.
Yes. They didn't say make it. They weren't planning. They weren't saying that there was going to be a ban on it or that they were going to eliminate it altogether.
If you think about it, the only way for people to adopt electric cars and to adopt new energy methods is to ban the old ones, especially in 10 years. That's the only feasible way to get people to quickly switch over. If they made cars illegal and you have to buy an electric car because the government forced you to, that's the only way everyone's going to switch to some sort of electric car in 10 years.
Yeah.
My car's over 10 years old. Why am I going to? There's hundreds of thousands of older cars that are close to 10 years or older because we don't need a new car every year. So to try and get how much of the population drives, let's say, a fifth of the population, what is that?
Well, population, that would be what?
Like, we'll just round it way down and say, 50 million drivers. They're not going to sell 50 million electric cars in 10 years. Yeah. Nobody has that. The average person, your average U.S. citizen, doesn't have that kind of money. And electric cars are not even that efficient, and they have to build an entire electric relay station infrastructure to even fuel up cars, because you can't do that.
And the funny thing is, what did the government have to do to get people to switch from previous vehicles to using gasoline-powered vehicles? What government mandate was required for people to switch? Oh, none? Yeah, that's none. I'm going to go with none.
I mean, it still took a few decades, but
it took decades to get gas stations everywhere and to get, but it got done without any sort of government mandates to have fuel stations and all, and yet that's part of their new policy, whatever they're talking about.
Well, I think
spending money on electric grids for electric powered cars and all this sort of thing. I'm like,
well, I think
if it was a superior technology, people would migrate to it. Just be like the same way that they migrated to the Model Ts and all of those sorts of things from previous ways of travel.
Yeah, I mean, the better technology is going to win out. It just takes some time. DVDs didn't push VHS out in a year. Sales boomed in 1999, but it still took, 8 years before VHS stopped being.
And even smartphones as well. That's, even though they're more expensive, they're more prone to being damaged and all that sort of thing. People still, they would gladly pay 3 or 4 times the amount for a smartphone than for a regular flip phone like we used to have. That just happened naturally. Why wouldn't that happen with an electric car? If the electric car is so much superior,
No,
that would just be the natural course of the market. People would be like, "Oh, I'm going to switch to a Tesla instead of my Honda or whatever."
So that's the way things work. Is this would happen naturally? That's why they're using the climate change scare to say this has to be done in 10 years, or the Earth is going to burn up by what 2030 is their estimate. The to be not hospitable enough to keep society as it is. So they're using that fear mongering to push this future land version of the United States out to everybody and say, look how wonderful this utopia is, and it's only going to take 10 years. That's what they're hoping the public would hear, is that's all it's going to take. But anybody with half a brain is thinking
it's utopian nonsense, like it always has been.
Yeah, maybe in another 150 years, we'll get some flying cars and some new efficient energy source that's better than nuclear reactors. But we don't have anything even close to that right now. We don't have an infrastructure to build bullet trains everywhere in the U.S. and to Hawaii or wherever.
Oh, and Trump even chimed in on that because he was talking about you get building a train to England.
So I think they're just using her idealism to put a positive message out and say, look how forward thinking we are, and we have to be because the Earth is going to be destroyed. So they're using fear mongering in conjunction, and then they have these guys behind her covering up for her stupidity, like that governor and the Mad Hatter guy they had on Tucker Carlson show.
Mad Hatter guy?
Yeah, no, so that was her
thinking in any way.
Yeah, that was her lawyer or something like that. But
yeah, man, that guy just weird and basically lying, just flat out lying.
Okay, I know this is a small point, but when I first saw the pictures of Tucker Carlson and him, I thought the joke was his hair at first. I thought people had actually photoshopped it to make him look ridiculous, and then I saw the actual video. I'm like, what is this guy? What's going on here?
He looks like the Mad Hatter's brother. It's the same hairstyle.
Yeah, I was like, this guy looks absolutely bonkers. He looks like a clown. But apparently he's a lawyer.
Maybe he's Doc Brown.
Yeah.
Earlier.
I know that's not a criticism of what he actually said or anything like that, but it's like it's very difficult to take someone serious when they look like a cartoon character rather than a real person. Yeah. I can't imagine him winning that many court cases because he was very fidgety. He was very unsure of what he was saying. And you're like, wait, this guy's a lawyer?
Because that caught him off guard when Tucker read that line that even people unwilling to work also get a paycheck. And he's like, oh, no, we wouldn't put that in there. And yet every news company that was reading the article and went through it saw that, because that makes no sense ever. You don't pay someone because they don't want to work.
Yeah.
I would choose that option if I could.
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing is you would get paid whether you work or not. So then if you do work, that's just supplemental income. If you get all the income you need in order to support yourself, feed yourself, pay whatever you want, okay, now you've got free time to do whatever. And instead of working a job that you don't like, but it's necessary, because people need the product that's being created, why do that? Why not? Like, if I had the opportunity and I didn't have to work the job I work, even though I like the job I work, I'm hopefully very good at it. At least that's that's a conversation for another chat, maybe. At least, yeah, I'm fairly good at it, but compared to the people I'm currently training with, I'm feeling woefully inadequate at the moment. Anyway, but if I had the chance, I'd just play music. I'd spend all day playing guitar and practicing songs and writing, which, okay, that's just, I mean, there's nothing wrong with somebody can make a living doing that. Well, but making songs and playing guitar doesn't exactly help the.
So here's a thought:
playing guitar or doing whatever they wanted as far as hobbies, nothing would get done.
Correct. But so here's a thought: New York just passed the bill for late-term abortions. I mean, if you get a write-off from a doctor, have it up to the day you're actually going into labor. In fact, what's his name?
No, the Northam guy, the guy from Virginia.
Guy. He
was
was saying
talking.
they would even take the baby out, resuscitate it, stick it, make sure it's nice and comfortable, and then discuss.
And then decide what to do with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how did that even get passed in New York? And why is Virginia even talking about that? What if this is a long con and the Dems are pushing out the nutballs and they understand they're going to lose power for a bit, but it's to push things so far to the left that when they come back in to just basic socialism, the country's ready for it.
Ooh. Okay.
How many kids in college now think socialism is a good thing just from media? Even though you sit down and talk facts, it doesn't make sense. They understand it can't really work here, and that's not how our society is based. Yet the further left it goes and the more extremist these people get, the Overton window has shifted way to the left.
Mm-hmm.
Normal conservatives are now viewed as alt-right and evil.
Yeah, and
it's pushed to get the window so far to the left to where socialism now seems normal.
And here's something else that kind of is the canary in the coal mine, or social media was a canary in the coal mine. People say, oh yeah, this particular user or that, like the adpocalypse and all that. No, social media was a canary in the coal mine because it has shifted away from applications like Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. And now people are being denied by banks. This is something that came out a couple of days ago. So one of the members of the Proud Boys, like one of their leaders in a particular chapter, he is no longer allowed to do bank with or have service with Chase. And I was like, and as far as I can tell, the guy is not white.
Well, it's because
the guy is a minority, but he just happens to have the wrong politics, and a bank denied him service based on that.
Correct.
That's
why I'm saying,
like, I don't care if they got banned from Twitter, they got banned from YouTube. Yeah, I think that's a terrible strategy. But as soon as you start losing access to services, that's where things get scary.
Well, how soon before being a conservative is considered being part of a hate group?
Yeah,
Republican.
And how like I thought there was laws where banks could not discriminate based on your political view. And yet Chase denied this person access to their services, closed their account without permission.
Possibly, but now if you're listed in a hate group that's documented with the Southern Poverty Law Center, that's actually considered different than a political affiliation. That's considered local to
And so a business can refuse service to you based on that?
Potentially. What?
And I understand certain bit, like I understand the idea of, if I'm the owner of my business, I get to do business with whoever I want. And if they can choose to deny businesses, but I thought banks had a policy where they have to do business with anybody who comes to them.
What if you're proven that you're a terrorist? How did you know? Is what I'm saying.
Well, that would be something illegal.
They're not a hate group. It's just a bunch of guys that stand for American values. Because of that Seattle scuffle,
yeah,
a lot of people view them as a hate group. So what if hate crimes, hate speech, and hate groups can now be discriminated against because they're domestic terrorists or potential domestic terrorists, and we don't want to fund them? That has different legal precedents than just saying discrimination based off political. Because now you're using this whole hate speech, hate crime, whatever garbage that's been spewed out for the last, 15 years. I think that's becoming normalized where that can be accepted.
And then you could be like, forget being kicked off a social media platform. We're going to go into the area of you can't do business here because of your politics.
I mean, it's very
business not welcome here. You can't access any services. You can't use, like, all of these things that are supposed to be public services will stop being public services. And then it may even cross the, like, if it keeps going at this rate, eventually it'll get to the point where even if you wanted to do business with one of these groups, you won't be allowed to. And it'll be, well, actually, there is precedent for this. Although it wasn't for political positions, it was based on race. This is exactly how Jim Crow got started in the first place. At first, it was at first it was denying people business, and you're like, okay, and then it became okay. Now we're making it the law where businesses can't accept people whether they want, or even if they wanted to do business with them, and that's what started the whole stuff. Yeah. That's where this is kind of shifting, and it always seems to be Democrats who want to.
Well, the Democrats
they
came up with the idea of having KKK members show up at Republican rallies. They are notorious for this type of extremist marketing.
Yeah,
I mean, for over 100 years they've been doing this. So
yeah, they've done this before. So
conspiracy theory thinking, way long shot, but I mean, it does seem feasible, and that they're using like AOC and like-minded people as their pawns to simply shift public perspective until their ideals are accepted as the norm.
Yeah. Okay, so I get what you're saying, because if they have radical people like Ocasio-Cortez, and those are supposed to be the representatives of the Democratic Party, and people view that as Democrats for the next 2-3 years, or maybe 4 years, then they come back and have the same positions they have right now, like their current positions on things. The Democratic Party may view them as a breath of fresh air and be like, oh, finally somebody's saying something sensible. And you're like, but that's further left than you were 8 years ago.
Correct. So if late-term abortions are now legal in New York, even if that gets rolled back, everyone's going to say, okay, well, fine, good. Now we're back to just 2 terms.
Yeah.
Or it was abortion shouldn't be legal, period, at least on the Republican side or conservative side. It's just going to be accepted. Well, at least we're not back at 9 months.
Yeah. No.
So that's why she could be dangerous. Is she's not? I don't think AOC has ill intent. I don't think she's in some secret cabal trying to destroy America. I think she's just idealistic with bad ideas.
Well, she's what Stalin would call a useful idiot.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
But like here's the other thing that I wanted to talk about, and so we'll hopefully this will be the subject we end up wrapping up with. So even though all of her interviews and everything she's said or produced so far as a Congress member, and anything she did on the campaign, she's a moron. Like,
no doubt.
But here's the thing that I can't quite wrap my mind around. She has a bachelor's from the University of Boston. She has a bachelor's in economics and international business or international politics. I can't remember.
No, I believe she only had a minor in economics, not a bachelor's, just a minor.
No. Minor was a minor in economics, and it was a master's in political something, but the degree was a bachelor's degree. It doesn't matter. Yeah. So the major and minor is the focus of your degree, but she still graduated with a bachelor's. And part of that bachelor's was an emphasis in economics and in, I believe it was international politics.
But let's be honest,
to the subjects that she has absolutely no clue about. And I'm like, so either the University of Boston just kind of passed her through.
Yes.
Okay, she graduated with honors from Boston University. And Boston University is not a community college. It's as far as I can tell, it is an Ivy League school.
You think
what sort of
colleges? You did not see that. It wasn't Notre Dame, was it? Was that Harvard, where that chick was yelling at the dean that it's not a place of learning, it's a place of.
No, that was Yale.
Yeah. But my question is, do people like that get
people there? So I don't know.
Do people like that get a degree?
Yes.
Oh, that is.
The bar is
beyond college anymore.
Yeah, so okay, that's what I was trying to figure out. It was like, so she graduated with honors. Does that mean that university is so abysmal they're just letting any idiot through? Or does it mean that she was actually smart and was playing the idiot? That's what I was trying to figure out. But if you're saying, if it's like what you're saying, that means, well, I mean, David Hogg got into Harvard.
If you look, so ANCAP was right. Affirmative action.
Yeah,
the minority and the woman, and statistically, women get more degrees than men in colleges.
Yes,
overwhelming.
Are now the biggest college dropouts. They are now starting to become the minority on colleges, and are graduating at a lesser rate than everybody else.
Okay, so even though it was a degree from was typically an Ivy League school. I mean, I was looking through their alumni list.
Is
They've got
Georgetown considered
Martin Luther King is an alumnus from there. Martin Luther King Jr. was an alumnus from Boston University. That's what they've got on their website. And I'm like, oh, how the mighty have fallen, I guess.
Is Georgetown an Ivy League, or is that just a big college?
I don't remember.
I saw some information recently in the last few days where they're now starting to institute a it's not restitution. What's that word I'm thinking of? Reparations for slavery, where they're now thinking of adding an additional tuition tax to pay for reparations, because 100 and something years ago, Georgetown had 217 slaves.
Okay.
But they needed so they sold them off, which was common practice down there or in that area because slavery was still legal. But now that college is trying to introduce their own reparation declaration, basically, to where they're going to start taxing the students and then paying those reparations back to people who claim to be descendants of those particular slaves, or anybody that is a descendant of slavery and lives in the area. So the colleges are now more virtue signaling entities, basing their enrollment off of how much diversity they can pull in, and show how much of the social effort they're behind, rather than graduating with actual knowledge on anything. A lot of the colleges are just shifting gears that way.
Okay, so maybe Boston is not Ivy League. From what I can tell, there's 8 Ivy League schools. So Brown, Columbia, Cornell, Dartmouth, Harvard, University of Pennsylvania, Princeton University, and Yale. So Georgetown and Boston are not included in that list.
Yeah, but they are still.
But they are mid-tier, or they're almost at the same level as those other respected schools.
Or they used to be.
Because it's not a Florissant Valley Community College.
Yeah. So as of current trending, the main things that white men, or just kind of men in general, are still graduating in is STEM fields.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to school for political reasons. They're going there to get a job.
Yeah, so, and that is rapidly changing.
That demographic is shrinking, and the major part of campus, of the campus demographic, is in social arts and in social media and in politics. So just because someone has a degree nowadays, or if they've gotten it within the last 5, maybe even 10 years, does not necessarily mean they know much more than a high school kid. In fact, I've seen some studies where they're saying in certain areas, college kids actually come out dumber than high school kids. They've been in college for 4 years and forgot they could have known.
Well, yeah, and I love this. So I've been watching or listening to Mr. Reagan videos, and he ends it with that famous Reagan quote. It's not that liberals are dumb. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Oh, yeah, I love that quote. But yeah, that's what colleges have turned into, which is why your smaller tech colleges and vocational schools, their enrollment is actually increasing. And it is typically male still, unfortunately, but those are going to be the money sectors. The rest is all the social and political facing. It's just a giant virtue signaling mess.
Well, and while currently, I guess, the technical colleges and STEM fields and all that sort of things have been mostly isolated, that is rapidly shifting. And I've talked about this. I don't know if I've talked about this on the stream. I just got my bachelor's degree from DeVry University, which, well, I guess back in their heyday in the 80s and 90s, they were a pretty reputable college. But
what did you major in DeVry?
Computer information systems. Yeah, computer programmer. Was just getting my bachelor's degree in that. So computer information systems with an emphasis in programming. But I was talking to somebody, and he said, I told him, I just graduated in April with my degree, and he asked me where from, and I said DeVry, and he's like, yeah, you wouldn't even get past the HR at Boeing. And I completely understand why, because I've talked about this with at least my brother, but I don't know about on stream. So I was on a senior project with a team of total of 5 people. And the senior project was, this is the last thing you have to do in order to get your bachelor's. 3 of the people on that project didn't know how to do the things that we learned in our first class. So it's a two-year degree, right? You have your associates, which is, and most of that is your prerequisites, your English classes, your statistics, your psychology, nothing specific to the job. The very first semester I had at DeVry, we were learning concepts of program management and building a basic website and all that sort of thing. 3 of the 5 people on our team couldn't do any of it. Like we had to set up where each week, it was an 8-week 16 total weeks for the final project. The first 8 weeks was planning out this project, designing the how we're going to put everything together, and then the last 8 weeks was setting it all up together. And unfortunately, I got stuck with the same 5 people for both. Sometimes you get to switch up in between. No, the same 5 people the first 8 weeks, same 5 people the second 8. I am glad that one other person on the project actually knew what they were doing. Otherwise, I would have had to done everything myself. Because we were rotating whoever was in charge for specific weeks. And I would be like, okay, I'm in charge this week. This is what I need done. These are the documentation. Fill this out. Some of the stuff, it was like, it doesn't matter what you put in it. You're making stuff up. We are simulating what somebody would do in the real world. There's no actual thing that's being done. You just need to say, okay, this week we did X. This week we did X. I sent this to people, and what they returned to me was the document I sent them with their name on it and nothing else filled out. And they turned that to me on the Sunday before it's due. And I'm like,
that had to be so frustrating.
You guys are out of your, how are you in college right now? And if I turn in a blank document, I get a 0 for this score. So I did everything I needed to do that week, got the blank document back from them. I'm like, I can't turn this in. Okay, I guess I'm spending my entire day filling out the work that you should have done and then submitting it for you. And my only recourse for this was at the end of the 8 weeks, I got to say, this person was completely useless on this project. Do not let them get a degree. That's all I could do. This person was no help. I give them no points. You are the weakest link. Goodbye. And that review of other people on the team counted for exactly, it was worth 10 points towards their total. It was on a scale of out of 1,000 in order. So like if you get anything from 900 to 1,000 is an A, 800 to 900 is a B. That the review of how much they contributed, that was worth 10 points. So even if they got a 0 on that from me, they could have still had a 990 for the class and gotten an A.
Yeah. Well,
and as far as I know, all 5 of us now have a bachelor's degree from DeVry.
Hindsight, you should have recorded the papers before you filled out anything, because you got a blank paper with their signature and say, this is what they handed me, and today is Sunday. It's due tomorrow. I will now complete their work. And then you have to actually give your instructor and to back up your claims on why they were useless and say they turned in nothing.
Yeah. So
didn't even do the work. I did it.
Yeah. I was doing and so the other guy was complaining about this too. He was like, dude, man, I'm sick of doing 2 people's work and it's not worth it. Well, and then I was like, okay, whatever. I just need this degree. I just need this piece of paper so that way I can start, submitting it to employers and get a job and all that sort of thing. And the more and more I'm finding out is employers aren't looking at a bachelor's anymore. They're looking for people with masters and people with, this is the stupid thing is a lot of the times they'll look for somebody with a specific number of years on a specific system, which is absolutely insanity. Like, we're looking for somebody with 6 years of C#. And I'm like, why? Why do you need somebody with that many years of C# if you don't know everything you need to know about C# within the first 6 months? You shouldn't be working on C#. You probably shouldn't be a programmer. Like everything, like right now I'm in a training course where we are learning to be performance engineers which that covers a lot of things, but we're focusing right now on Java. You know how much time they took to teach us everything we needed to know about Java? 2 weeks. 2 weeks on Java. Everything else has been other systems. I was like, yeah, everything you needed to know about Java in order to code in Java, in order to be proficient with the system, in order to pass the OCA, you're supposed to be able to learn in about 2 weeks. Okay, that's something I can get behind. Now I'm learning other stuff as far as performance engineering, and I'm learning other systems, because I'm going to be a full stack developer. That means you learn every step of the process, not just one particular system, and I was like, if I were to go through this training camp or training course and it was a boot camp type thing, and I got out of this and was looking for a job using what I just learned in this course, they'd ask me how many years of Java I have. I'm like, 2 weeks. That would be my answer. I've got 2 weeks of experience with Java. And they're like, oh, nope, sorry, we're looking for someone with a minimum of 3 years. What? Why? According to this company that I'm working with right now, 2 weeks. 2 weeks is enough to make me not just a beginner on Java, but with all the stuff that we've been teaching, all the stuff that they've been training us on, and all the stuff we've been building, as far as we're building applications ourselves and stuff like that. The stuff that we're having is the equivalent of what other people are doing with 4 years of experience, with 8 years of experience. Yeah. So at the end of this, I'm getting a portfolio with that sort of thing. Sorry to go off on that tangent. Sorry, but
yeah. Back on topic.
What is the current topic?
I don't know. The last thing I wanted to say was just about her degree, because just reading through her information, it sounds like she's smarter than she lets on, although I don't know. It's very difficult to tell.
I don't believe so. I mean, I think she could be intelligent, but her ideals do not make sense in the real world, and especially in a free market, capitalist-based society like ours. It just doesn't make any sense, the stuff she's talking about. People care about homeless, of course. People care about, impoverished families. But conservatives are more on the view on you need to work yourself out of that. And there's plenty of opportunity to work yourself up a managerial chain. You can even do that at McDonald's. Why someone's a fry cook for 10 years at McDonald's, that's their own stupid fault. Yeah. That's nobody else's fault. You have no aspirations. So that's more of the conservative view, is people will help you when you need help. But if you're just sitting around being lazy and not productive, you don't need help. You need to get off your butt and go do something. That's completely the opposite of socialism, which says everyone should be equal because all people are equal in productivity, apparently. I mean, human life should be regarded equally, but not all people have the same IQ. Not all people have the same strength, same height, same agility, same physical prowess or features or looks or intelligence. That will never be equal. So you can't expect everyone to do an equal job or make equal pay. Just can't happen.
Oh, there was a really good video about this from the Foundation for Economic Freedom. So I don't know if you're familiar with that channel. Seamus, what's his name? The guy who runs Freedom Tunes also does small cartoons for something called the Foundation for Economic Freedom.
Yeah, those are good.
Yeah, they had a video, I think it came out either today or yesterday, but it was talking about exactly the subject, where it was two characters who were playing a video game. One beat the other, and then the one who lost was like, this game was rigged. And they went over, it's like, well, it can't possibly be rigged because it doesn't know who you are. It's basically a challenge of skill. And so you just weren't as skilled as the other guy. You just don't know how to play the game. And it goes through, breaks down, it's like, well, if we gave you both the same score and said you're both the winners, how has that changed anything about the way you play the game? You haven't learned how to properly play, it hasn't changed anything about reality. And yet that's what people want. It's like, yeah, we want equal outcomes for whatever. And I'm like, well, that's what you're gonna people who don't know what they're doing getting the same kind of outcome as somebody who does know what they're doing. That's the opposite of fair.
That's why the bar drops to the lowest common denominator. It boosts their thinking to think they're on par with your average person, which they don't have that skill. and it detracts from everybody else's skill because no matter how good you are, you're still just at the same level as everybody else.
Yeah.
So that kind of defeats the point of even have all of this technological jobs or STEM fields, because everybody's of equal intelligence and equal capability. So just stick anybody in there.
Yeah.
Whole claim behind I'm a woman, so make me CEO, or I'm a minority person, so I should be running this company.
Oh yeah, and that policy is going
skills, by all means, work for it, and if you can do the job, great. That's going to carry the company forward.
That's another thing I wanted to talk about before I went into my diatribe about my personal experience. Is STEM fields are starting to have mandates on in order to encourage equal representation for females in fields of STEM, which means which means men who would be qualified for those positions are going to be replaced by women who are less qualified, but just because they need the diversity quota.
Well, the danger
feminism is cancer.
Well, I mean, the dangerous thing about that, making it more of equality based and trying to have equal outcomes, is you lose the merit system, and that's very easily abused. So once these the loud feminists and stuff kind of pull their heads out of their rears and start thinking, you know what, I can actually use this system. All I got to do is go to college, sit on my rear. The professor is going to pass me anyways because I'm a woman of color, or I'm a feminist, or I'm a, whatever other insert minority group here. You get your degree, you graduate, you're instantly hired because they need to meet their quota. Just like at your graduating class, 3 people graduated having done nothing.
Oh yeah.
So
those were. If I was running a company, I would not hire them to be janitors, let alone people with a bachelor's in computer programming or computer science.
So then they can abuse the system and become aerospace engineers because these companies are looking to hire a specific group of people. These supposed minority and oppressed groups that haven't given an opportunity, but they don't actually have to work for it, and so they're not going to know what they're doing. Then you have faulty products, faulty science, planes actually crashing due to bad engineering, bridges falling on people, which from my understanding of that Miami incident, the design team was like an entire female engineered group. Not the construction company, but the ones that designed the bridge. And they had independent researchers go in and look at the blueprints, and they're scratching their head saying there's a massive weak point right here in the middle.
How was this not caught?
Yes. They said this is not even a standard bridge. They were trying to make a standard concrete walk across bridge look like a cable supported bridge. So I did a little research into it because people were saying, no, it wasn't an all-women group. There was men building the bridge. And I'm like, I don't care who built it, who designed it, who was the architect. And it was, I think, an all-women team that was fairly new in the industry. So there's plenty of smart women, but the ones who are currently, the smart ones are the ones who earned it. They went through the whole process to everybody else. But now we are starting to get women in certain positions that they didn't earn and shouldn't be there. It's dangerous.
Indeed.
All right. And I think that's where we'll wrap this up. So thanks for clearing up because I was like, something doesn't add up here. You got a degree from what supposedly is a good university, and yet you're a blithering idiot in most areas. How does the person on paper for Ocasio-Cortez match the personality of the person we see in the media? That's what I was trying to. I was like, but yeah, if colleges have, because I knew I've seen it in my personal experience, but I was like, there should be some areas where that's not the case. But apparently it's all over, and no redeeming the system apparently when it comes to the university mechanics and all that sort of thing.
Why do you think you're working where you are right now? That's the whole company exists.
Yeah, if colleges were doing their job, the company I'm working for right now would not exist.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody for showing up. And I was going to say something, but I forgot. I was like, oh, that's what it was. Is like, how do you do, my fellow kids? That's
what?
That's the. Well, that was the phrase that Steve Buscemi. That was a clip I played at the beginning. You probably, I don't know if you were here. It's
Nah.
oh, is that's what I'm saying? Is like they're trying to appeal to the younger crowd, and that's
Probably not doing a very good job of it.
Oh no, well that's the whole point. Is that clip? It's Steve Buscemi being Steve Buscemi and being old Steve Buscemi, and he was talking about in his youth being an undercover cop that went around to schools. And it's Steve Buscemi, and he's got a T-shirt on, and he's holding a skateboard, and he walks up and like, "How do you do, my fellow kids?" It's just,
oh yeah.
And I was like, the story, yeah. Well, the story that started everything off was the Kamala Harris, where she was talking about listening to Tupac, smoking weed, listening to Tupac and Snoop Dogg. I was like, oh, she must have been an extreme hipster, 6 years on the scene before they were. All right, that's where I'm gonna end this. So thanks for joining me, everybody, and catch you next week, hopefully. All right.
All right, later.
Bye.